Hello and welcome to the DrivingMaul show. Hi, I'm Paul. I'll be your host this evening here on New Zealand Sport Radio. And yes, I've just cut off Boa mid-sentence, and I'll let him and Stephen Harris back in a second. Now, folks, if you are watching from South Africa, now might be a good time to turn away because I've got a funny feeling these two are going to come off a bit of a long run-up, talking about slowing down play. Now, we'll put it in early. All teams do it from at certain points, but obviously there's a certain team that's got a reputation over the last couple of months of doing it more so than others. That is going to be one of our topics conversation. We'll be looking forward to the Rugby Championship games this coming weekend. What will Ian Foster do with that All Black squad? And then there's been a couple of news announcements today that we covered off on in the Lockdown Beers and Rugby Chat at 5 p.m. But these two boys weren't on it, so I'll get their opinions on a couple of things on that one. So joining us this evening, I have got Stephen Harris. How are you doing, sir?
Very good, thank you, Paul. Always a privilege and a pleasure to be on the TDM, and it's a shame you did cut Bauer off because he was right in the middle of about to tell us something really important. So I'm curious to see what he had to say. Obviously not on here though.
And, good evening, Bauer. How are you doing, sir?
Good evening. Very well. I hope everyone is well and safe. What I was about to say was, Lion Red is an acquired taste. That's what I was told once upon a time, and I live by it. Every day, the more I drink, the more I can enjoy it, and it's almost like a connoisseur-like taste. I know it's not everyone's cup of tea, but yeah. But no, look, Box did kind of slow it right down to what you call Uber Eats Rugby, or what Joe Moody called Smoko every 5 minutes. But I have to say they did some fantastic things as well, which we'll talk about, particularly how they beat the All Blacks well and truly up front. So it's a bit of concern probably there, but yeah, a lot to talk about today.
Cool. I thought you were about to jump straight into it, but before we do, I'm just going to go, because I know you love the sound of that bar. So I just thought, as you mentioned the other day, so I thought I'd do it on air this time rather than pouring it beforehand. Yeah, I've gone for the New Zealand lager here, a quality New Zealand lager. It says. The reality is, it's the cheapest New Zealand lager that's in the supermarket. So there we go. And if they sponsored us, I wouldn't say that.
It's the drink of preservation. I was going to say preservatives.
Preservation.
The drink of preservation.
No, what it is, the drink of it's the budget drink. I think it's more like that.
Drink of a poor man.
Yeah. Poor,
say it like
I thought that was double brown.
Yeah, poor man's lager.
No, everyone's talking about this about double brown. Yeah, sorry, not Lion. I did look at trying to get some Lion Brown at one point, but it's just too expensive. I just couldn't believe it. I was like, hang on a second, this isn't supposed to be an expensive beer. But the box was of 18. Maybe I got my maths wrong, and it wasn't. It was actually a good deal, but I'll have to go in on that calculator and try and figure it out how much it is per can. Anyway, before we get on to the big topics then of the week from the weekend, just a couple of things that have come up. The Fijian Drua have named 5 more players. I would say not household names, but maybe one of them does have a Olympic gold medal in there. And I think that's what we're going to see, isn't it, with this Fijian Drua side, is that it's going to be they're going to be leaning on that sevens background quite heavily. We've got 2 out of the 10 players announced so far have been sevens players. So so that's there. Unless you've got any particular sort of pieces of knowledge you can impart to us about these players, then I'll move on to the next bit.
Well, all we can pretty much add now, that's 10 players that they've picked. But I just want to touch on one of the players they have picked up, Te Ahiwaru Siriki Daveta, who has played for Tasman. Now, he's an interesting acquisition. He's a lock. He attended St Kentigern College, so listen, he'll be pretty well versed in New Zealand style forward play. So I'm really excited that they've picked up a guy who's only 23 years old, and also if you kind of look through the rest of the guys, there's also Siru Pepeli Vularika, who's a little bit older at 31. doesn't say which position he plays, but I'm assuming he is a back because he's only 5'3" high, 81 kg. So that suggests to me he's a halfback. But they've also got a couple of other young boys there as well. A good lock in Mele Tera Nalangi, who's only 22 years old, 6'5", and he's also out of Suva as well. And of course, there's Mel Tuni, who's only a 21-year-old as well. So it's good to see, even though they have got some guys who are veterans, they've picked some younger guys in the team as well. Just their last player, I really don't know a lot about it, is Vinya Habosi. Don't really know much about him at all. Maybe one of our viewers tonight can tell us a little bit more about their player. So it just seems to be coming together quite nicely.
Yeah, look, 27 more players to be announced over the next couple of weeks. So I guess we're up to 37. So it looks like they pretty much know their squad, which is good to see. But yeah, no last minute kind of things. I did watch the video for the Tihuara from Tasman that he gave, and yeah, talking about wanting to learn about his roots or his culture as well. So maybe not sort of when he gets to go back to Fiji, or when he gets to go to Fiji with the team, I think he'll learn a bit there. The other one the big news item today was that that Warren Gatland, who is back in New Zealand, sat down with Clayton McMillan, and they announced that Warren Gatland is going to be the director of rugby at the Chiefs, and Clayton McMillan will stay on as head coach next season. Boa and I are going to sit down and do for your ears only, for a supporters special tomorrow, looking at what the role of a director of rugby is compared to a head coach, because Boa, you're a World Rugby qualified coach, is that right? And also you're a coach mentor.
I am a World Rugby qualified level 3 coach, as well as a rugby educator, as well as a World Rugby coach, educator / trainer.
So
I do have
we've got someone with those kind of expertise, rather than just me guessing at it. I thought I'd quiz him tomorrow and go through those two roles and what the balance is between those, and so what we can expect from Gatland and what we can expect from Clayton, and how they might work together. But just one question for you guys: is this a matter of Clayton's done so well, they want him as head coach, they've got Warren Gatland under contract, so kind of what do we do with him and shove him upstairs because, hey, it's that, or we sack him and we have to pay him out? Or is this actually Warren's idea, and it's going to be a marriage of going to be a good thing? What are your thoughts? Is this enforced or not?
Looks like it. I don't want to say too much about it, because Warren's a well-respected coach. He's earned his stripes, but obviously, last few assignments he's been in charge, it hasn't been his finest hour. So I think, to me, my opinion is it looks like a situation where they've created a position of convenience, and I think Clayton McMillan's done an outstanding job, and Chiefs, and particularly the players, and I think this would have come from the players as well. They should give Clayton a good run at creating his own culture and letting his own style of coaching do the job. And you have to understand, being the coach and director of rugby, which we'll talk about tomorrow, are two very, very different roles. The two are interrelated. If you have a really good relationship with your DOR as a head coach, you can do wonders. If you don't, it can get a bit thorny, and things just kind of get sideswiped. And then when things go wrong, everyone starts pointing fingers, and usually, the director will have to take the rep. But if look, I just feel that it's an unusual sort of marriage, and I just hope it doesn't interfere with what Clayton wants to do, but only time will tell.
Stephen, your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm just chuckling because I just saw the post that came up from Josh Tiepany. I think it is something along the lines of Gets will run the water on and basically put together videos when required. There you go. They might not be too far off the mark. Listen, like most things, had a really good season under Clayton McMillan, and Bar stole a little bit of my thunder, because I would imagine there would have been some very favourable player reviews for many of the guys that were involved in the Chiefs. And you know what? They're just trending in the right direction. They've got some really good young talent coming into the Chiefs as well. Tyrone Thompson, who's the hooker from Wellington, has just signed with the Chiefs, and some of the young talent they've got running around. Well, we've seen that running around also in the Waikato team, you know, like Gideon Rampling, you know, Coombs Fabling out on the wing. Man, it's like a little candy store at the moment. So they could be just onto something developing really well at this very minute. And I must admit, I like the idea of McMillan staying in charge, and I agree with Paul. I think it was a case of, gee, we got him all the way back to the Chiefs. Let's just find another job for him.
Now, just so people are aware, I mean, as Bo says, Gatland is a very well-respected and the most successful Welsh rugby coach ever. One of, if not the most successful Lions coach ever, with a win in Australia, a draw in New Zealand, a won series and a drawn series in New Zealand, plus obviously the lost series now in South Africa. So, look, he is one of the best and top coaches in the world. Let's be very clear about this. Also, when he first arrived at the Chiefs, he really changed the way they trained. It became much more focused and shorter, but they got more out of it, and the players really liked that. The training sessions were shorter, but there was no gaps, there was no hanging around. Everyone knew exactly what they were doing, which is what the one time I sat in on an All Blacks training session that was and sat next to an international prop, and he pointed out that that's what was going on there. So clearly, clearly Gatland does do a lot of things really well. And I think also, well, at least initially had the players on board. Clearly, the results didn't go their way post-COVID or post, well, not really post-COVID, but after the first COVID break. Interesting to see how it all pans out. Also interesting to see that on Twitter, one of the mainstream media people made a complaint that no one was available from the Chiefs to talk about it today. And you're like, well, that's a bit strange. And I have got a Chiefs media email saying that media opportunities later in the week will be announced, which during this time of the year is unusual, to say the least. You don't normally get Chiefs media opportunities outside of the Super Rugby season. So it'll be interesting to see what those are later in the week and how much and what they say. I will try if I can, but if they're online, definitely to dial into those.
Paul, one thing I'll just add before you wrap it up is what you said about Warren Gatland is spot on. He's a great coach, but all of the things before you said relates directly to coaching at the coalface, which is what Clayton McMillan needs to be doing. Being a director of coaching is a completely different role altogether. And if you try to coach at the coalface, chances are you will end up overshadowing the head coach, and that's where problems start. I've got a bit of experience, at community level, playing the role of director of rugby, and it's an overall holistic role. It's kind of like being the general manager of a company, and you need to have a relationship with your direct sales manager. So the head coach is sales manager. He or she will tell the rest of the staff, this is what we do on a daily basis, all the tactics, all the strategy. General manager makes sure all the resourcing, all the education, the sales training, everything is in place, and all the tactical side is reviewed, and the ongoing player and coach development is managed. So to a very, very different role. So whether Warren Gatland can do that, only time will tell, particularly at first class level. So it's going to be a very interesting little period here for the Chiefs franchise.
Absolutely, and especially as they're looking at a structure that we don't see very much in New Zealand rugby, but we have seen in Europe. But that's a different setup as well. But we'll go through all those tomorrow when we have a quick chat about it on that one. So then, let's look back on last weekend. And I've done post-match reviews of both games, so I'm not intending to go through the games in detail. But one topic that has come up in both social media the media, and also from some of the players themselves, including Joe Moody. Moody mentioned it in press interview, is the amount of stoppages during play and the amount of players taking a knee and having the medics come on at a frequent basis. Now, what I must admit, I'm finding a little bit amusing from a British and Irish Lions and supporter is that the Springboks have been doing this now for a couple of months, let's be blunt. And suddenly, when they do it against the All Blacks, it suddenly has kicked up. It's like kicking a hornet's nest, where it didn't, and it sort of seems to have bubbled up and has become a big issue. Whereas the fact they've been doing it for their previous 7 Test matches, now 3 British and Irish Lions, a couple against the Pumas and a couple against Australia, doesn't seem to have kicked up such a hoo-ha. But suddenly it has this weekend. So why do you think that is, boys?
Well, a couple of reasons. Number one, whenever the 2 top teams in the world play each other, particularly when one of the teams are the All Blacks, there's a big expectation that we're going to see end-to-end rugby, thrill-a-minute stuff. Now, all of a sudden, when he gets dragged into this smoko break, I'll use Joe Moody as his quote, the smoko break every 5 minutes. It's a real drag. There's no momentum. It's stop-start. The entertainment factor gets completely taken out of the way. And of course, when you overdo it against a side who constantly want to attack with ball in hand, which is what the All Blacks attempted to do whenever they had possession, it's blaringly obvious. In the Lions tour, you had 2 sides. One looked like it was waiting till the grass grew green, and the other side was watching paint dry. So it didn't really make too much of a difference, but it was very obvious on the broadcast time, when it runs into almost 120 minutes, obviously something was wrong. And of course, when there is expectation that a side will play up-tempo rugby, and when you're constantly waiting, and there were a couple of instances where the referee actually said, come on, let's get on with it. And I'm going to put a little bit of blame here on a referee who I have a lot of time for, who is, I forget his name now.
Luke Pearce.
Luke Pearce, yeah. I in my view, I think he's arguably one of the best, if not the best ref in the world. All he had to do was actually enforce one bit of, one part of the game where if there are players who don't have, broken limbs or life-threatening injuries or neck injuries, which aren't going to pose a risk if they get moved, should have just simply asked him to move on and played the game on. He didn't do that, and then it just descended into a farce. And I think that's where most of the frustration is. And, it just got completely exposed as, a time-wasting tactic to break momentum of the game. So from an entertainment point of view, it was pretty woeful. And it was a real blight on the game. And of course, you don't expect this sort of Hollywood in a contact sport where it's a real gladiators arena. So I think that just took the gloss off the Springboks just a little bit. And of course, all the internet memes and I read a review on a South African rugby website where they rated all the players, and then most of the comments are you missed the water crew and the physio, they should have been given a 9, those sort of things. So it really didn't paint them in a good light, and it just kind of stifle the game where, most of the All Blacks fans obviously expected a fast open game, and they didn't get it, and that's probably why we're finding all this hoo-ha about it.
Some comments in the live chat. LB makes some good ones here. That we didn't want to play the All Blacks game, and that's absolutely true. We will do however we can just to get to break things up. Now, and we saw particularly in that first 5 minutes where the Springboks got it wrong because their kicking out was just over the line, which allowed the All Blacks to take quick lineouts, and hence we saw a try pretty early on. Straight after that, every single kick out that the Springboks did landed in the stands. And that way, you stop the quick lineout. Now you don't quite get as much territory, but you slow but you stop the play, right? So I mean, those sort of things are legitimate ways of doing it, of breaking up play. The less well, I mean, one of the things that we see at pretty much every single scrum across the board is a prop taking a knee, because if a flanker does it, you can play on, but if a prop does it, you have to stop and wait for them to get treated. So you'll see props are perhaps some of the quickest what's the word I'm looking for here? Recuperating players on the picture that suddenly look so hurt they can't stand, and then suddenly have got a ton of pressure through their backs at a scrum. I guess it's not the matter of the fact that they were doing it, because when you say everyone does it, it was the amount that they did it. I guess it was because it was pretty much every line out as well, which we don't normally see. Now, I just want to show one. And Stephen has seen this one before, but the Rugby World Cup ball in play time has increased every year. You can see that since 1995, it's been on the upward line there, and that's basically because World Rugby wants more ball in play time. We're still under 35 minutes, so we're still over half the game is not actually being played, which is kind of amazing. And Stephen, you were talking about what could be done about it, because you I think you had some thoughts on that side as well.
Yeah, it's made me think about something. Can you imagine if basketball had no stop clock, and you could just basically, you could pretty much run a game or slow it right down, because there were big athletes that weren't fit on the basketball court, and you didn't have a 30-second shot clock or something like that. But what irritates me the most, and it's not directed at the Springboks, it's directed at World Rugby, it's directed at the officials. World Rugby brought in a 50-22 because they thought, that might push wingers back, so there'd be space on the outside. They brought in a goal line dropout as opposed to having another scrum. I can actually see why those numbers have actually gone down in terms of time and play. Over the years, we've watched some All Black tests, and it's got to half time, and we've thought, my God, there's only been one or two scrums. So which basically means there's an absolute lot of time in play. Now, my issue, World Rugby, if you're really serious about speeding the game up, you already had a really good look at that Lions South Africa series where trainers were running on, they were taking breaks ad nauseum, and believe you me, there was a reaction to that second test as well, and that was the length of time that test took. It was close to 100 minutes. It was longer than a game of football, which is 90 odd minutes. To me, once again, Luke Pearce, he's warning these guys when they've already pretty much wasted over a minute and telling them to hurry up, and they still wander off like Brown's cows. Yeah, it's a tactic, and it's right within the rules. But my big thing is, if halfbacks know that the scrum, they haven't won the hit, they will basically delay the put-in simply because they know that their tight head didn't win the hit. The line-out, they'll delay the line out because all of a sudden they've either got the yips or they haven't quite got the call in their head. They get penalised. I think officials have to basically make a stand. Now, whether you have a 30-second time limit from the time the penalty is called to the time the line out is formed, I think that's what you've got to do. If this is an entertainment game, this is what we require. And I know Albie's going off at the moment, but even in South Africa at the moment, they're actually quite, if you read a lot of the social network, they're actually quite divided about this particular style that they're actually playing in South Africa. All I can say to the South Africans that are tuning in, yeah, keep on playing that style. Because if you look through since 1992, your winning success rate against the All Black is 30%. So, hey, carry on, guys.
You made that point about the time limits. So this one I was just going to jump into Global Rapid Rugby, because Global Rapid Rugby had basically went down that kind of route, which now unfortunately Global Rapid never really got to take off. But they brought in the idea of time limits for scrums of 1 minute and time limits for lineouts of 45 seconds to set. So yeah, interesting that look, it's something that and what Go Rapid Rugby was now 3-4 years ago. Probably that these kind of things about no, actually 4 or 5 years ago. Sorry, that these things were being thought about. So look, it's nothing. This is nothing new to a certain degree, and we can see with that graph that for a long time now, World Rugby and the various lawmakers are trying to speed things up. So go on, Bob.
Yeah, look, just to add to that, I think a set play clock. So for having a time limit on the scrums and lineouts, and also the ball when it's available at the end of the ruck. Now, you know, if you pretty much watch every game of first class and above rugby, how many times have you heard the referee saying use, and then 15 seconds later the ball is still at the bottom of the ruck? So, you know, the law is in place. You either use it or lose it. But World Rugby, for whatever reason, at the elite level, tend to get their knickers in a twist and say, look, it's okay. Let's just kind of play some kind of different version and allow the referees to have a bit of a free hand. So what really needs to happen is either you use it or lose it. It's the same thing in a driving maul. If you drive the maul forward and the ball's transferred back, as soon as it stops, you say, right, use it. And if you don't use it, you lose it. So the protocols are there in place. For some bizarre reason, they're not policed the way it's meant to be. And of course, what really got under my skin was, you know, players who had blood injuries were treated in the middle of the park and everyone had to stop and wait till all that was done. And there was one instance, it took 3 minutes and 11 seconds when one of the Springboks props got patched up. It took so long, broadcast went into, I think it was a Tourism Queensland style video. They had a drone shot. You know, that's how ridiculous it got. I mean, you know, you'd expect this weekend footy, golden oldies, you know, the level I sometimes play on and off, where, you know, everyone says, look, guys, let's just take 5. Everyone's taking, you know, sucking in the big breaths. But at test level, when this sort of thing happens, it's, you know, it makes a mockery of it. And unfortunately, World Rugby, every year we keep tinkering with these rules. Game development says we want a faster, safer game. But in reality, what seems to be happening is the game is becoming slower and slower when it wants to. So this really comes down to how the rules are being policed. And I think those areas which Stephen and myself, we've put some ideas across, if that kind of gets flushed out, this problem is going to be sorted out very, very quickly.
I think you're right that basically, look, the laws that are there to handle it. The referees only use about half the law book anyway, most of the time, because there is too many laws for them to try and follow. Now, you correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding is that essentially the referees get together before the July, or what was now is June internationals, and then again before November. They might get together again actually before the Six Nations. So they get together about 3 times a year, I think it is, to have a quick sort of conference, a big Zoom conference call, conflab as to what are we trying to focus on, boys, and what are the changes, etc. Now, so that last call happened before the Lions series. The next call is going to happen basically in 2 weeks, or 2, maybe 3 weeks, basically before the next set of. And therefore, there's not been a call in between. So for Luke Pearce to change the way that it was being called during that second Lions test would be is just he hasn't had a change of direction yet, and he won't get that until about 2 or 3 weeks' time when that call happens. And that's how the World Rugby refereeing, as far as I'm aware, kind of works. Is that I think that's a vague nod there from you. Is that pretty much correct?
I'm going to jump in here. I spoke to a top Auckland referee the other day, and I said, "Have you got tools in your kit for teams wasting time?" He goes, "Oh, heck yeah." He said he's done it when teams have actually taken too long before they've thrown the ball into the line out, setting their line out, and he's just basically short arm penalty and penalised them. And he said, watching the game on the weekend, Luke Pearce did not go into his tool set kit, but he managed to find some of the most weird penalties, infractions that, he penalised one of the All Black props for having his feet in the next pass. I've been watching international rugby for a long time. That has just come out of absolute left field. The other thing, not just walking to lineouts, but I also think teams should be basically penalised. So, for example, if you've got 5 minutes to go, a team scored and they can maybe score a last-minute try and conversion to win, and then they take their sweet time walking back to half-time. I think there should be a stop clock on that as well, that they need to get back to half-time, and at halfway. It only takes 10, 15 seconds to run back to halfway and kick off. It's as simple as that, but it just seems some teams will just pretty much milk it, and they milk it because the officials don't do anything about it.
Oh, we saw that between Taranaki and Bay of Plenty, when Bay of Plenty were coming back at the very end of the game, and Taranaki was like, "Oh, we don't want to give them time to score 2 more tries. We'll saunter back to halfway, so they've only got time to score 1 more." And now they didn't in the end score it; they gave up one instead. But you could see that Taranaki were like, "Yeah, we want to wind this clock down because this is whilst we're in control of this game." There is a small chance that this could go pear-shaped. So look, it's it is, I say, it is all teams. It's a matter of degrees that are part of this. The other one that Josh points out is the video about Quade Cooper's kick at the end of that game. Look, Quade Cooper's kick at the end of the game. Yes, you've got 1 minute to take that kick. He took longer than that, but as has been kind of said, that time limit is very, very rarely, if ever, enforced, and there is no shot clock to give us a guide as to what that time is. Yes, Quade Cooper took longer than he should have done, but hey, it's never called.
I was going to say, if I can just give you both a very blunt assessment, there's 2 aspects to this. Number one, either the referees, and I'm not going to say this out loud, but this is my opinion. The referees either have the wrong people, wrong personnel on board in charge of training and education, or number 2, they're just looking at all the irrelevant significant stuff. The irrelevant significant, as you rightly pointed out, Stephen Harris. I think it was Joe Moody got pinged for moving his feet. I mean, all the years of rugby, I've never ever seen that. That by the way, that's the correct call. That is like super technical. But the very obvious stuff get missed out, like forward passes, knock-ons, and obviously this time-wasting situation. So I think where the focus is the wrong place as far as refereeing and officiating education goes. Because, I have a lot to do with WR education, particularly with coaches. So we have what we call the fundamentals and pillars of rugby, and that's what we focus on. So we try and keep things as simple, as basic as we can. Unfortunately, we are seeing a trend here with the referees. They seem to be able to pick the most obscure of rules, and also WR technical and game development seem to back them up with picking rules which you see 1 in 100 test matches, which will have some sort of impact. So I think this is where the problem is, gentlemen.
Whilst not addressing the problem that is right in front of them.
Yep. So I think in summary, there are tools within the referee's toolbox to speed the game up. South Africa did a good job at disrupting things, and we could see what they were trying to do. Does it make it easy to watch? Not particularly. It is what it is. Don't referees get told what to focus on in the game, says LB. Yes, they do. That's what I was talking about. That they have a call before the Six Nations, before the July Internationals, the June Internationals now they are, sorry, and before the November Internationals. So 3 calls a year where the international referees from North and South both balance themselves to make sure that try and make sure that they're calling similarly or in the same way, and also where they get reminded what are the focus points at the moment for World Rugby. Now, clearly, the one at the main thing at the moment is about head high, about high tackles, but we're not going to go into that one because that I believe is the current focus area. I expect time will probably be added to that list in the call in 2 or 3 weeks' time. So of course that's looking back. Any other sort of kind of points? Because I mean, that was the big thing that's been blowing up on social media and stuff. But any other kind of particular points you want to talk about from last week before we look forward?
Just for me, there's been a few comments in the chat room there about maybe having a stopping the clock in play. I actually don't want that. I just basically want the ref to use his tools to keep momentum in the game. That's all I'm asking for. I don't think a stop clock solves anything, because once again, if you're going to have a stop clock, that stop clock's going to be used when you have injuries. Somebody's going to go down with his bootlaces. I actually believe when Boa spoke about players going down, I personally think if you can walk off a paddock, you walk off a paddock unless you've either been knocked out or you're lying down on the ground with a broken leg. I think you basically walk off and you quickly throw a sub on straight away to actually keep things moving along, keep the pace moving along. Yeah, sure, it's not gonna suit the South Africans, but man alive, this is an entertainment game, whether we like it or not. If we keep trending down this path, wow, it's going to be a turn off for a lot of people. You know, one of the beauties of the 13-man code, there's a lot of continuity in the 13-man code. It's constantly on the move. I know it's a completely different concept. I was watching saw a bit of NFL today, and quite frankly, you know, the clock moved about a minute in about 10 of our minutes, if you know what I mean. I certainly don't want rugby to be like that, and that's what happens when you bring in a stop clock.
And in the past, I've witnessed games where referees of the stature of Peter Marshall, Tappa Henning, the recent past Nigel Owens, where water carriers, when they try to run out, they actually chase them away, say, no, look, wait till I call an official timeout where you can have a drink. And if someone's good, like, you know, if there's a bit of blood or an injury which is, you know, not life-threatening or there's threatening limbs, they just actually ask the players, leave the field, we have to play on. So it's, you know, it's always been like that for some reason. The last sort of few months, particularly building on from the Lions into this game, it's gone downhill. And of course, the other thing I want to say is I have to give 100% credit to the Springbok forward pack, completely obliterated in most instances. The All Black forwards were completely outplayed. All that good work and possession, unfortunately, meant nothing. But wow, that was a real sandpaper, abrasive style of Springbok forward play, which has to be commended. It's just a shame that they couldn't convert that into points.
So that's last weekend. Obviously, also we've just lost Stephen. He'll be back. Don't worry. We lost. Also, the Wallabies beat the Pumas as well. But to say, there's a post-match reaction to that on the channel. Just go and look at those. I don't think there's anything particular that jumps out from those ones. From that game that springs to mind. So looking forward then, Boa, what if you are Ian Foster? What do you do with this squad of players? Do you run out the same team again because they didn't have a great game, let's be honest, or do you make some changes as it's now a dead rubber, or is it a matter of we want the clean sweep? How are you viewing this weekend?
No, look, you're only as successful as your last game. So Ian Foster will not, I can assure you this, they will not take any chances, and they will want to right last week's wrong. Yes, the All Blacks did win, but it was pretty scratchy performance, let's face it. And some would argue that, they didn't quite deserve to win, particularly on that forward play. So I'd make a few changes, particularly I want to see Luke Jacobson come back into the starting 15 because I think we need that carry forward. And the tweak which really needs to happen is the clean out. We need to start committing maybe at least another one or two numbers into the clean out, look to secure the ball rather than try to go too quick out wide at every given opportunity, because soon as this All Black side, once they get quick recycle ball and they go forward, the points will take care of itself. Of course, there's a couple of unforced errors, particularly George Bridge, and he's taken a bit of slack, particularly on social media. look, Bridge is, he's been quite sound under that high ball, but that first error where he completely misread it, and the All Blacks scored off that, so that might have pretty much sealed his fate. But I would be looking at getting my strongest 15. I probably look at, depending on how Richie Mo'unga pulls up, look at getting him into the side. Maybe not start, but get him in there in some form or shape. And the player who I'd like to really see be utilized more is Damien McKenzie, because I think his form's been outstanding, and he's someone who needs to be utilized more, given more opportunity, given more time. But the nucleus of the operation.
Hang on. I've got to bring up on this one. Okay, so everyone is saying now that Geordie Barrett is essential at 15. We've got Bowden and Richie Mo'unga as basically the 10s. Where and how do you utilize Damien McKenzie?
Well, that would mean we'll have to make space for him. So based on performance, and if you allowed me to finish, the guy who I would be looking to rotate out is probably going to be Rieko Ioane, because in my view, I think he had a really, really patchy game. And Quinn Tupaia particularly coming back off the bench. So there's going to be a number of headaches there. It just really depends on how these guys pull up at training, and come Thursday when they name the side, they have to name the best 15 based on form. Simple as that. But
I guess you rotate Rieko Ioane for Quinn Tupaia. That still doesn't make space for Damien McKenzie. I just don't see whilst I agree, he is a fantastic player and he should be in there. I just don't see how he fits. I can't find a place for him if he can't be at 10 and 15. For me, he's definitely not a 12 or a 13. He's not a winger for me. He has to either play 10 or 15, and to me, he's behind better players in those positions.
Yeah, I got to go with you there, Paul. Like for me, if Anton Leonard-Brown is available, he comes into that midfield because he just brings a little bit of physicality into the midfield. I know Rieko Ioane's good, but I think he brings some really smarts, and I think it'll be George Bridge who'll pay the price for his performance. He'll push out onto the wing. I can't see too many changes to that bench in the back line, simply because I think it's just a little bit too late. Richie Mo'unga has been in isolation for 2 weeks at this stage, so that might be a little bit difficult to say the least, guys. So for me, that might be the only change in the back line.
Wow. Richie's in training today. So we saw photos of him back at training. Sorry, guys, I'm just zooming through trying to find the Springboks lineup. I've not got that to discuss. I've not downloaded that one to discuss, I'm afraid, folks. Sorry about that. But looking at this one, to me, as you say, the big problem for the All Blacks was at the breakdown, and it is the balance in that back row. I think when you've got Akira Ioane and Ethan Blackadder, you're playing 2 6s with Arnie Surveyor, who is a good 7, but he's up against 2 open sides, and Arnie's more kind of an 8-7 than necessarily a pure fetching 7. So to me, we're really missing that Dalton Papulehi, Sam Cane player, and I think that's where you need to really look at it. How do we get that extra mobility in there? And as you can see, folks, I think any of us have got an answer to that one, unfortunately.
Oh, Paul, if you look at Australia, they were really successful because of the work rate of Hooper, especially. He was just absolutely fantastic at the breakdown, and I think that's probably where we are missing a specialist 7. If Dalton Papali is available, I think he comes back into the side. I think. Listen, I'd stick with Akira Ioane. I would stick with that same loose trio, in my opinion. The unlucky one is probably going to be Hoskins Satutu, because to be fair, he really did add some good value when he came on later in the game, but I suspect that they will go back to Jacobson. That would be my 3 if Dalton Papali'i is available.
And Paul, the answer to that is actually quite simple. The breakdown, twofold. Number one, obviously, when you're going into the breakdown, these guys will have to clean out a lot harder and be more physical. Number two, on too many occasions, we are planning to use just a single man to clean out the ruck. That needs to change. We need to at least throw 2 bodies in there. Once that is done, I think it will solve this problem out. Number of instances we saw David Havili take the ball up front and he was turned over because there's only one person wanting to clean out against 3 or 4 Springboks who were trying to flood the ruck. So yeah, I mean it is a bit of a balancing act, but I would definitely fit McKenzie in, and if it was up to me, I would probably chuck him on the wing, and then at some point bring him to first 5 in that sort of format. But again, we'll see. We'll wait and see what the coaches come up with.
Yeah, I think it's so the next game is in 3 weeks' time or 2 weeks' time against the USA, and I think that's where we'll see a lot of the fringe players, or a lot of players who aren't involved now, get a run out. Looking at this side, to me, it's George Bridge is a difficult one. Do you drop him and then his confidence is gone, or do you try and stick with him through this one? The fact that he stayed there for the whole game, I was shocked by how you took off Will Jordan and left him on. Just really confused me big time.
Strange, very, very strange decision.
In that one, clearly they have got a lot of faith in him. Now, he has had a very injury disrupted season with the pectoral, then muscle at the end of last season, beginning of this season. I think he had appendicitis or something as well, and then he's been in and out. He hasn't played much rugby this year. So from that point of view, I think it's AK says George Bridge at his best still isn't good enough. I disagree with you there. I'm sorry. George Bridge at his best is a very good player, but he is nowhere near his best at the moment. So because of that one, we'll see. And also Simon Hughes' next point: the All Blacks USA game isn't so necessarily guaranteed to happen because the Ireland USA game got called off. We'll see on that one. We'll see how that one pans out. But so there you go, folks. I think we're going pretty much the same side. Try and shuffle up that back row if we can with Papali'i, and then also perhaps look at replacing Bridge. I really want Will Jordan to get another run out, though. I think he's somebody that we should be growing into that role, and that 14 jersey could be his for the next decade.
Look, so to me, Jordan needs to play 80 minutes, and if everything goes to plan with the All Blacks, he'll be dotting down more than one try this weekend. He is, in my view, going to become an absolute superstar in world rugby, no question, if not already. So why on earth he got subbed is just beyond absolute belief. I'm with everyone else. I was just dumbfounded when I saw him walk off.
Now, as far as I can see, the Springboks haven't announced their side yet. They do announce it early, and as LB says, it'll be out soon probably. But here is last week's lineup, and what changes do you think the Springboks bring in? Because they didn't look anywhere near as tired or as jaded as they did in the first 2 games against the Wallabies. They were clearly up for this one, and that sluggishness was gone. Do you think you can roll out the same team again, or what changes would you make?
Paul, I think they might make a change in the front row. Kitsoff was really impressive, in my opinion, when he came off the bench. And I actually thought he scrummed really, really well. I'm just trying to think if he went onto that was on the tight head or the loose head side, but he definitely dominated dominated his marker. I also wonder if they might be tempted to just make a tweak with the number 8 with Vermeulen and just maybe get a little bit more pace into their loose forward trio. And to me, probably the other obvious one is Cheslin Colby, if he's available. I think he comes. He's probably, to me, is the straightforward switch out.
Cheslin Colby definitely, and I think Nkosi unfortunately then misses out because Mapimpi stays on in that situation. Josh reckons that that Pollard and Willie, LaRue. He reckons that Pollard and LaRue get replaced. It was strange that Elton Yanchis didn't get any opportunity at all last weekend. Even in the last 10 minutes. I mean, he's that kind of player who, he was the team he's the side that was leading the All Blacks around when they beat them a couple of years ago in New Zealand. So the fact that he didn't get any opportunity at all shows that the coaches don't have any faith in him, unfortunately. And it's a real shame he's not been given a go. So I'd like to see Elton Yanchis have a go. LB says that LaRue would never get replaced. I guess the only person who could potentially replace him would be Colby, if you wanted to keep Nkosi and Mapimpi there. But I think one thing you have to do is definitely play Khaleesi and Quagga Smith. Those two guys had a great game last weekend. I think that's going to be key. Otherwise, I can't see there being much.
Paul, if you recall, two weeks prior for the Wallabies test, I was quite adamant that Quagga Smith needs to start because the value he presents is tremendous. And he had a fantastic game. In fact, there was one turnover I thought he was perfectly legal, and he got pinged. Very unfortunate. That was a brilliant turnover. He used every ounce of his body as well as every ounce of his rugby IQ to score that turnover. Unfortunately, penalised. There'll be two key changes I would like to make. One is get Francois Stein into the starting lineup and give de Klerk a bit of a breather and get the younger Nantes into the starting lineup and just look to attack a little bit more. Just use that width rather than just persist with this box kick, which is starting to become very bland and predictable. And I think the All Blacks will do their homework and they will be ready. And one thing if history and statistical patterns show anything at all, the All Blacks do not have two bad or average games back to back. Usually a bad or below par performance is always followed up by an absolute blinder. So some real warning signs and red flags. So I think the Boks kind of need to adjust and look at fighting fire with fire. If they continue to kick and they'll probably come back again and double down on these tactics. All it will take is maybe one or two line breaks, and then we could see a bit of a disaster unfold. So the Boks really need to be on the A game, and they need to start players on form, not on reputations.
The Dr. Wright, I don't know who is if Karate is over there, but one of the big things that needs to happen is actually communication, right? As has been shown by there's a video out there showing the last thing, it's 2 minutes or whatever it is of the game, and it shows where the overlaps are, where there's a 6-on-3 and all these kind of situations, and they go for the box kick or they go to the wrong side. You kind of look, it's about saying it's about communication to the halves and saying, right, we want it, and getting it out there. It's not about throwing it out there at every opportunity, but it's about just when do you get that overlap, or when is there when are they under strength on one side, then go for it. And it's communicating that and getting the ball out there at the right time, rather than saying put the box kick away and keep spreading it. And that's to me that's the main thing.
Paul, it's interesting that I was about to say, sorry, Bob, just a quick thing. It's interesting that we're talking about another team who's got a director of coaching, because unfortunately the guy that is with the team in Australia at the moment, to me, he's just a facilitator. He facilitates a game plan, and that game plan is so heavily implemented or entrenched into the Springbok side that nothing out. They don't see the space. They just see the game plan. And that's why they don't recognise that space on the outside. And of course, that video, for anybody who's seen it, we should post it, Paul, because I actually think it's really quite entertaining, because it therein lies
informative.
yeah, and entertaining, depending which side you're looking at it from. But it sort of demonstrates the two differences between the two sides in a major way.
So Josh, five of our starters hadn't played the box before. Looking at the box side, I'm not sure what that balance would have been. To be honest with you, I must admit there were a lot less players involved than I thought there would have been from the Rugby World Cup opening game between the two teams. So that was I was a bit surprised how much change has happened in both sides since then.
Well, what I was about to say was actually this game plan South Africans play. It's a very old school playbook. What it is basically the entire field is chopped up into 16 squares, and depending on which part of the field and which square you're on, you have a couple of options. But unfortunately, with this Bok game plan, in most of the squares, every top option or number one option is to kick. So it's a very robotic. It's like McDonald's sort of, going through a McDonald's drive-through. Can I give you some fries with it? That sort of stuff. And it's very prescriptive. It's very coach-driven. It's very micromanaged sort of stuff. And Paul, you spoke about communication. Well, maybe they should get the physio lady in the midfield, because she seems to be doing most of the communication. Every single time she ran in, you could see on the headset, and then there was a camera shot on Ninaba. So there you go.
She must be close to her 50th odd test. I'm surprised she hasn't been given a blazer.
Oh,
she certainly got 3 caps, well-earned caps in the Lions. So not every physio can say that. Okay.
Anyway, I'm not going to deign that comment with my opinion. Anyway, moving. But
that's what you got us on for, Paul.
Look, I mean, as Aaron said much earlier in the show, he was like he doesn't have a problem with the kicking first strategy. He has only issues around the stopping the clock strategy, or stopping play strategy. So look, if clearly they've done their they've done their research and gone, okay, our best chance of winning is through kick. And look, it works a lot of the time. Bridge had some real problems with it. LB mentioned something about the fact that that whilst all the kicks look very similar to us, apparently Faf was doing a lot of different things with those kicks, with front spin, back spin, and other things to make it much harder to read and much harder to catch. So to my mind, the kicking bit, fine, but just improve that communication around when to go wide, because there are opportunities. Don't try and switch it up and just go wide all the time. That would be a disaster. I think they've got to stick with the kick first strategy, but just add in that comms personally. Thoughts that also we've also got the gone blank, Wallabies versus Pumas return match as well. Do you see anything? Another win for the Wallabies.
Boy, I tell you what, I was really disappointed with the Wallabies, and I suspect so was Dave Rennie. That really and truthfully, they didn't run over the Pumas, and they really didn't take their opportunities. So, on saying that, I don't think it's going to affect the table, and I think he really does need to play some of his squad, like the All Blacks. They've got a tour at the end of the year as well, so I can basically see a few changes coming to this Australian side.
No?
Yeah, I'm absolutely with Steve. I think they have to try some new combinations. Look, I have to admit I didn't watch the game live, and I'm glad I didn't, because it felt like I didn't miss much. It was a pretty drab sort of test match, wasn't it? There were lots of errors, and Would it be fair to say Australia probably left 20, 25 points, which they could have easily converted? They just butchered it. The Pumas just, I don't know, it was a no-show. I was extremely disappointed and quite surprised, frankly, because the Pumas have had a very good run and a good record in Australia. So I can't see the Pumas actually pull themselves out of this rut or hole. But if Australia turn up with some new combinations and if they start blundering their way through and start coughing up some penalties, which they have a tendency to do, that will open the door and leave it ajar for the Pumas. But more of the same. But I think Dave Rennie will look to blood most of his newer players, and they'll be raring to go as well. So it could work either way. Maybe things will click and just the Wallabies might put some serious points on the board, or they'll just go from error to error, and this will turn into a real dogfight, and something interesting could potentially happen.
The LB Argentina may be tired of being on the road for so long. Absolutely. They've had the hardest trip into this. They've made the least complaints about it, and what we've done, we just disrespected them with photos. So sorry, folks, with photo calls. So look, yeah, absolutely, they should. And Josh said, look, they'll hopefully front up after that captain's photo thing. Unfortunately, that was before the last game, so you'd expect them to have fronted up in the last game from that, not in this next one. So, there we go. Not right saying, yeah, Argentina had good 20-minute periods, but not more than that. And you're not going to win a Test match that way. There, I think Dave Rennie will probably roll out pretty much his first choice squad one more time, and he needs to keep that winning run going. To keep that positivity, get the last home Test match as a win before heading overseas. I think is very important for them, both from growing a fan base as much as anything else. To be honest with you, as we know that the need to sort of grow the sport over there. Well, there you go, folks. We've had a look back at last weekend. We've had a look forward at this weekend. We've talked about a few other things along the way, and hopefully you've all enjoyed it. Don't forget, I'll be back at 5 p.m. tomorrow with the lockdown beers and rugby chat. We'll look at basically the news from the previous 24 hours. Also, Bo and I will be putting out a special director of rugby versus head coach, so you can understand what the differences are and what Warren Gatland may or should be doing, and what Clayton may or should be doing as well in their new roles. And also, don't forget, if you like your NRL rugby league, then hey, it's getting towards the pointy end of the season. It's finals weekend this weekend, so join the boys in the Standoff Show at 8 p.m. tomorrow night as they preview the NRL final.